My narcissistic manager stole credit for my work and tried to put me on a fake PIP, so I buried him in his own compliance policies, made his audits fail, and let the company fire him with his own emails as evidence. I didn't set out to ruin my manager. I set out to survive him. But there's a thin, beautiful line between survival and strategy. And once you learn how to live in the emails and the logs and the tickets, once you understand that the company worships what it can screenshot, you realize you don't have to swing at a narcissist. You can just hold up a mirror and make sure it's company branded. I'm 32, operations engineer at a mid-sized SaaS company that sells workflow software to boring but rich clients. Think compliance dashboards, audit trails, uptime reports. We sell trust. My manager, let's call him Carter, was the kind of guy who thinks strategy is just talking louder with a slide behind you. Perfect hair, Patagonia vest, the whole latte leadership starter kit. He never cursed. He didn't need to. He'd say, "This doesn't feel accountable," and you'd feel guilty like you'd kicked a cat, even when you'd done nothing wrong. He loved visibility, which meant he loved being seen near successful things. If a project went well, he was the lighthouse. If it went badly, he was the distant shore, reminding you that the sea is dangerous if you're not proactive enough. The first month he was my manager, he moved our daily stand-up to 7:45 a.m. because winners get up early, then booked a quick retro at 4:30 p.m. because reflections compound. That meant he owned your morning and your evening, and anything in between was your problem. He added a soft on-call policy, be reachable just in case, with no stipend. He copied VP-level people on every thread where he typed the word coachable. He renamed our shared team folder from Ops to Ops Strike Team, and then sent us a Medium article about elite Navy unit culture. I wanted to ask him which SEAL team is responsible for JIRA triage, but I like my rent paid. The credit theft wasn't subtle. I designed a new failover playbook that cut our MTTR by half. He presented it to leadership as my team's implementation of my resilience framework, which is like calling a cookbook your idea because you own the dining table. He scheduled a skip level with my director to discuss growth paths for me, then told me afterward that the director had concerns about your executive presence, which is code for Carter told someone you don't smile during his metaphors. I asked my director about it later in a totally different context, and he blinked like a raccoon in daylight. He'd never said that. Carter also had a pet golden boy, Liam, who'd been at the company for 8 months and pronounced Kubernetes with a sh somehow. Liam called Carter coach, unironically. Every work stream magically routed through Liam, even if he didn't know the difference between active-active and warm standby. Liam would volunteer us for things in meetings. We can get that done by Thursday, right? And Carter would nod slowly like a benevolent judge granting a parole request. Then the work would land on my lap with a, "Hey man, you're the best at this." They loved handing you a grenade, pulling the pin, and telling you they believed in you. I could have left. My friend offered a referral at a competitor, but something in me wanted to see if I could fix it from the inside without breaking anything that wasn't already broken. Also, we were 3 months from our ISO surveillance audit and 2 from a big enterprise renewal. That meant leverage, if you know how to hold it without letting anyone see your hands tighten. I started where Carter worshipped, in the numbers. I built a dashboard called Service Readiness Exec View, because if you put exec in a title, people click it faster. It pulled from JIRA, ServiceNow, our status page, our PagerDuty act times, our change approval app, and our customer comms tool. It tracked MTTR, change success rate, customer comm timeliness, rollback adherence, and something I snuck in called policy conformance. Green if every required field was present, red if anything was missing. Each record had a field for approver. Carter liked to be approver because approver is a crown. Perfect. I also did the boring thing no one wants to do. I wrote emails, a lot of them. After every meeting where Carter made a judgment call that bypassed a step, I sent a summary. Per your guidance, we'll proceed with emergency change 2117 without a rollback plan due to time sensitivity. Noted that client comms will go out post-change. I'll attach this to the change record. He never corrected me. Why would he? He wanted speed and the credit. He also wanted to be the hero who said, I made the hard call. And emails are great for monologues when you forget other people can read them later. The team started forwarding me little gems. Carter had a habit of answering direct questions vaguely and then replying, all with people higher up CC'd so it looked like he was on top of it. We'll course correct, he'd write, never clarifying what the course was. He'd ask us to lean in on weekends, then hide behind startup flexibility. When folks asked about comp time, I'd say, don't nickel and dime your future. He wrote, we're family, in a Slack announcement once, and I watched the typing indicators turn into graveyards. Then he crossed the line from annoying to dangerous. We had a scheduled maintenance window for a client called Northbridge. Their contract is full of those sharp little sentences that lawyers use like scalpels. It requires documented rollback plans and client sign-off on any emergency change that touches production. Carter decided to fold a quick schema tweak into that window because, in his words, while we have the hood up, let's tune the engine. No ticket, no rollback. He told Liam to run it. Liam ran it. It looked fine. 12 hours later, a batch job choked on a field it didn't recognize, and we had duplicate records with mismatched foreign keys. We fixed it, but the data reconciliation was a week of gray hair. Carter went on the weekly exec call and said, we encountered a data anomaly unrelated to planned work and resolved it within SLA. My jaw made a sound I'd never heard before. 2 people on my team interviewed that week. 1 put in notice. Carter told the rest of us, attrition can be healthy. I stared at the camera and imagined flipping his desk like a baptism. Instead, I made a decision that felt like laying out tarp before painting a room. I decided to make our audit the main character. Auditors are not the villains of stories. They're the weather. You don't fight weather, you dress for it, and you build your house with a roof that remembers it rains. Our ISO auditor, Greg, is polite to the point where you almost miss that he's measuring the entire time. Your words, your papers, your pauses. He loves 2 things, existence and evidence. If you say a thing exists, he will ask to see it. If you show it to him, he will ask where it lives. If you tell him where it lives, he will ask who owns it. If your answer is Carter, you better have a label. I went to compliance 2 weeks before Greg's visit with a box of donuts and a calendar invite called Proactive Pre-Flight Service Ops. I brought the change logs, the emails, the red-green dashboard export, and my on-call policy printout. I didn't editorialize. I asked questions in that helpful voice that HR writes themselves in the mirror. Hey, want to make sure we're solid. I see a few emergency changes without rollbacks approved by Carter. Does policy allow this? No. I see a few incidents where client comms were marked sent, but I can't find the messages. How do we prove timeliness? We can't unless they exist. What's our corrective action plan template? They had one, bless them. Great. Can you email me the template and your questions so I can track? They did. I forwarded the email to Carter. Per compliance, here are the items needing your guidance. I'll implement whatever you decide. He replied, let's not get lost in paperwork. The dashboard started to do its work. It sent a Monday morning digest to the execs because Carter had asked for visibility streams. It showed MTTR trending green, thanks me, change success rate improving, also me, and policy conformance by approver. Everyone else hovered 90% plus. Carter sat at 58%. The first week, he slacked me bug. The second week, he slacked let's tune the logic. I replied with the query and the policy references. Silence. The third week, he didn't say anything. But the COO pinged me. Can you present this at QBR? Absolutely, ma'am. Carter's other mistake was trying to put me on a PIP without paperwork. It was clumsy, weirdly passive. He started dropping concerns in 1S. I sensed some resistance to our culture evolution. He said I seemed transactional. He said leadership needed more positivity from senior ICs. He asked me to craft a personal brand plan. He started giving me tasks with vague deadlines and then marking them late in his own Notion board. which I discovered because he screen shared without closing tabs. I sent him a recap email. Per our conversation, can you specify the success criteria and due dates for the below? He wrote back, let's not get hung up on dates. Then, the following week, he scheduled performance conversation, growth plan. I brought HR to it. He turned the color of printer paper left in a window. He pivoted to just checking in. HR asked for documented examples. He had none. Meanwhile, my dashboard was a parade of compliance, and my tickets looked like they could testify under oath. The thing about narcissistic managers is they don't understand patience. They think pressure equals progress. They don't notice you laying down rails until the train is already on them. I started adding 2 small forms of petty, one for him, one for me. For him, I created recurring 10-minute visibility syncs for every project he owned, with the exec sponsors as optional. I scheduled them at odd, dumb times, 9:05, 2:20, so they stuck out like thumbtacks on his calendar. He could delete them, but the act of deletion pings a record. He could ignore them, but they were little red dots on his day. For me, I set the weekly change log to print to the network printer in his pod every Friday at 4:55 p.m., with a cover page that said, per your leadership mantra, we own outcomes. The printer wasn't mine. It belongs to the network. Network jobs do not care about your early Friday happy hour. I also found out how to be very loud without speaking. Our CEO is a former engineer who misses writing code like old soldiers miss the field. Once a quarter, he lurks in random Slack channels and asks innocent questions. I dropped a video demo in #eng sharing of our new audit assistant workflow that auto-validates rollback fields and pings approvers if comms aren't attached. It was real, useful, and absolutely a trap. People loved it. CEO emoji reacted with a rocket. Carter DM'd me, love the hustle. I replied, thanks, integrated with service readiness per your push for visibility, and posted a screenshot of his earlier email praising the dashboard. I didn't have to. Slack's search is forever. Greg arrived on a Tuesday. He wore a sweater that said, I don't raise my voice. He asked for our change management procedure. We gave him the PDF. He asked for a random sample of emergency changes from the last quarter. He opened 3. 1 had no rollback plan. 1 had NA and client comms. 1 had a rollback plan that said, we'll figure it out. All approved by Carter. Greg smiled without teeth. Can you show me the corrective action for these? Compliance pulled up the open items sent to Carter. And the owner of the corrective action? Compliance. Carter. And the due date? Compliance. Pending. He made a tiny note. Observation logged. He moved on to incident response. He asked who owned the on-call policy. I do. He asked if off-hours work is compensated or traded for PTO. Yes, per section 5.3. He asked if we had any exceptions. I referenced the thread where Carter had overridden the ROTA as too bureaucratic. HR had already weighed in with policy. Greg nodded. Please link that thread in the policy exceptions register. He did not yell. He did not need to. Weather, remember? Carter tried charm. He thanked Greg for keeping us sharp. He used the word lean so many times I thought he might be trying to manifest weight loss in the process itself. Greg asked the same question he asks everyone on Control 8. 2.3. If you were me, what's the next piece of evidence you'd want to see? I said, approver-specific audit readiness trends by week. Carter glared at me. Greg said, that would be very helpful. I pulled up the dashboard. Greg said, this is excellent. Carter said nothing for the rest of the meeting. The week after the audit, the COO scheduled our QBR. Carter was supposed to showcase operational excellence. I was supposed to demo operational insights. He led with culture, slides of happy stock people and quotes about ownership. Then the COO asked, how are we ensuring we don't get another observation next quarter? Carter said, we're maturing our processes at pace. She said, at what pace? He blinked. I shared my screen and walked through the audit assistant workflow, the dashboard, and the list of open corrective actions by owner. His name was on most of them. I didn't highlight that. The numbers did. The COO turned to him and said, "I want these closed by the end of the month. Send me your plan by Friday." He tried to put me back on a PIP the next day. The HRBP came to the one uninvited. She asked for examples. He said he didn't want to create a paper war. She asked if there was performance risk to the business. He said, no, just attitude. She asked if the attitude prevented deliverables. He said, no. She closed her notebook and said, "Let's focus on coaching competencies. I'll send you our manager training." I almost felt bad. Almost. The detonation wasn't a single explosion. It was a string of firecrackers that kept going and going until even he realized he was standing on the wrong side of the fuse. Our big client Halcyon did their Q2 review. Their auditor Priya, who can smell spin like a bloodhound smells bacon, asked for the same emergency changes Greg had flagged. She asked where the client had accepted risk. There was no acceptance, just Carter's judgment calls. She downgraded us to moderate risk for the quarter. Our contract says 2 consecutive moderates trigger a fee holdback. Finance started breathing loud. Carter tried to reroute. He said the team was resistant to change. He said I was transactional. He said we were stuck in old ways. The COO asked for data. He had feelings. The CEO dropped into #eng sharing again and wrote, "Love that audit assistant. Can we extend it to change approvals globally?" I said, "Yes, already in pilot." Carter wrote, "Great partnership between ops and leadership." No one reacted. Slack has a special kind of silence that hums. The petty part, since you asked for clever and petty, was small, daily, and absolutely legal. I kept the printer job. I added a second tray. Every Friday at 4:57 p.m., it printed the audit assistant compliance graph with the line labeled Approver, Carter, in company red. The office manager named the printer Coach's Conscience. People started detouring past it on their way out, just to see if it had printed. It always had. It never jammed for that job. I don't believe in God, but I believe in network printers with a sense of timing. I also discovered that if you invite someone as optional to a recurring meeting with the title Escalation Review, Visibility, their calendar doesn't scream, but it does whisper. I forwarded the series to our COO's chief of staff with a note. Looping per Carter's visibility push. No need to attend. She never attended, but she saw those subject lines twice a week for a month. When Carter tried to claim in a leadership sync that escalations have decreased since I took a more hands-on role, she said, "Great, I've been seeing the invites. What's the trend line?" He said, "Positive." I shared the actual trend line. It was green because of the workflow I built, not because of his hands, which mostly gestured at my work like a magician who can't do card tricks. He missed the corrective action deadline he'd promised to the COO. He submitted a paragraph with 3 buzzwords and 0 dates. She replied, "Please submit a dated plan by COB tomorrow." He didn't. She set a meeting. Ops leadership, interim structure. Attendees, COO, HR, compliance, my director, me, and Carter. She started with, "We're reassigning operational approvals to Dana for the next 2 quarters. Carter will focus on strategic partnerships." That's corporate for go sit in the corner and write vision decks no one will read. He nodded like it was a promotion. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, HR announced he was pursuing opportunities outside the company. His LinkedIn said, "Excited for what's next." Mine said nothing. I don't need strangers to know I sleep well. He emailed me from his personal account. "I know you orchestrated this." I replied, "I followed policy. The rest was gravity." He didn't write back. The relief wasn't even the best part. The best part was the way the team exhaled. People stopped scheduling 7:45 a.m. anything. The soft on-call policy disappeared like a bad dream when you stand up. HR updated the handbook to clarify off-hours compensation with a bright yellow box and sent it to everyone. Compliance sent me a thank you that read like a tuxedo, crisp and polite and secretly pleased. The COO called me into a meeting and asked, "Do you want to lead ops approvals permanently?" I said, Only if we make documentation a first-class citizen and put the dashboard in product, not in my Google Drive. She laughed, then said, "Do both." We did. We cleaned up the data. We put the rollback requirement into the approval flow so you couldn't click Approve without filling it out. We tied client comms to change records, so if it wasn't in the log, the status page wouldn't move. We took the on-call rota out of Notion and into the HRS, so it triggered payroll automatically. We set the dashboard to Is Public within the company, and the CEO bookmarked it. Every Monday, he posted one question in the thread. What did we learn? It's corny. It's also how you build a real culture. Boring, specific questions and a shared place to put the answers. Liam stuck around for a bit like a mall kiosk that lost its lease. He tried calling me coach once, and I told him to stop. He wrote a long Slack post about gratitude for the chapter when Carter left and then applied to product marketing. They said no. He went somewhere else to find a new lighthouse. I didn't miss him. You don't miss a draft when the window finally closes. I didn't win because I'm smarter than Carter. I won because I accepted that the company's god is documentation and I started bringing offerings. I won because I learned to make the truth heavy enough that it drags liars to the bottom without me pushing. I won because I stopped arguing in adjectives and started speaking in timestamps. The printer still spits out a single page on Fridays at 4:55. It's muscle memory for the office now. The soft whir, the feed, the paper sliding into the tray. The new manager, Dana, framed the first one after Carter left. It hangs above the printer like a church bulletin. Per your leadership mantra, we own outcomes. People smile when they see it. We do own them now, and they're not weapons anymore. They're just ours. TLDR. Narcissistic manager stole credit, bypassed policy, and tried to PIP me without paperwork. I built a visible, exec-facing dashboard tying compliance to the approver. Him, documented his judgment calls in email, fed compliance in HR, exactly what they ask auditors for, and automated reminders until his audit gaps and client downgrades forced the COO to bench him, then fire him. Petty garnish, thousands of visibility calendar invites he couldn't complain about, and a Friday 4:55 p.m. printer job that still reminds the office, we own outcomes.